Hi there, it's Gabrielle Nicolai from SpeechKids.com. I am here on Tuesday, it's 10 o'clock, and I had a couple of questions from last week, and then I also had, and I'm looking for my notes, I had something I wanted to continue from last week, and then I also had a question on the comments section that I wanted to get to. So Melissa said, how can we get a 4-year-old to stop whining? So I wanted to jump in right there and talk about your 4-year-old. So 4-year-olds are kind of awesome, and they are challenging in their own way. And I feel like every age is fabulous and challenging in its own way. So let's talk about 4s. There's a couple of different things that are happening at age 4. And one of them is that your child, I don't know if you've noticed, is really capable. 4 is like they're in control of their body, they're in control of their mouths. You may not always think so, but they are. They are just like bursting with ideas that they can now tell you about in a really coherent, maybe not so coherent some of the time, but in a really coherent way. And so they're just really capable and they're feeling it. They are like, give it to me now. The world is my oyster and I want to get out there and go for it. And so that's like a pretty amazing thing about 4s, but it can also be a really challenging thing because they're seeking novelty a lot of the time. They want to push the boundaries a lot of the time. They want to test their own and other people's limits a lot of the time. And so it does fall to you to sort of figure out, oh, they need maybe some bigger boundaries, maybe some changes from the previous routine or boundaries or rules, and yet they still need structure. And they, as I feel like always happens, they feel like they want more independence than they can actually have, right? So it's a push-pull, as most of these things are. But this is where I think the problem comes in. Okay, so you've got this really capable 4-year-old who then is whining. And why are they doing that? Like, you're so capable of telling me what you want. You're so capable of understanding what's going on in the world. Why can't you just be reasonable and explain to me what it is that you want instead of just bugging me and whining all the time? So I'm guessing that that's where Melissa's frustration is coming from. And the first question that I would ask is there a particular time of day that the whining is associated with? Because time of day can give us some information about, is the whining generated by boredom? Is it generated by just being tired, being hungry, having a moment of the day that's not particularly structured, where there's some lag time or transition times, and I think we talked about transitions a little bit with very small children, and the same is sort of true. Transitions are hard. Transitions are hard for grown-ups too, right? So I think the first question is, when is it happening? The next thing, and I'm just going to check my notes real quick, is to program, to use your 4-year-old's strengths in adventure and boldness and confidence, and use those strengths to program some activities for him. While you're doing that, then you're also going to be giving him or her more of your time. The best way, one of the best ways to combat whining is to make sure that you're putting in time, demand-free time with your child. And that just means doing something together. It can be 5 minutes, it can be 2 hours, it can be all day if you've got the tolerance for that. But time that is demand-free with your young child will go far in the moments when you then need to put a demand on your child, like, we're leaving now, or it's time to come for dinner, or, it's time for, take your pick, the thing that has to happen next. And so sometimes when kids are whining, they are telling us, I'm not getting enough of you. I feel like you're making me work more than you are supporting me. And I'm not saying that to make anybody feel guilty or bad, because guilty is a terrible feeling that no one should ever feel. But I am saying notice it and see if you can create some time in your day, again, even if it's just 5 minutes, where you can put some relationship dollars in your relationship bank account, so that when you need to make a demand, a withdrawal, you've got money in the bank. So those are some thoughts about whining. A routine will also help, and we can talk more about that another time. I hope that helps, Melissa. Thanks for your question. I had said last time on Thursday that I was going to talk a little bit about signing, and this is something that I'm really, really excited about. And I saw it work with my own kids, and I have seen it work with other children. And sometimes when I suggest to my clients' parents that they sign with their kids, they get very concerned. And so I want to address the concern off the bat. There is no evidence, in fact, there is evidence to the contrary, that there's no evidence that signing will decrease speech in a verbal child. So you cannot make your baby not talk by teaching them to sign. Okay, signing only makes things better. And so as such, it's a really great tool, because why? Kids learn to use their hands before they are able to use their mouths. I often say speech is kind of the ultimate fine motor activity. That means small motor activity. And signing, in the way that very young children do it, is more of a gross motor activity. It's a big muscle activity. And so when you introduce some signs, and you can do that at about 6 months, you can start signing with your baby. And one of the signs that is really highly useful is the sign for milk. And I'm showing it to you right here. It's meant to be milking the cow. But your baby probably will not do the sign at 6 months of age, but they may start doing it at about 9 months of age. And so 6 months is about the right time for you to start showing them, oh, you're having some milk. You want some milk, when you see those signs that baby wants to nurse or have a bottle. And that's sort of one way to get them communicating in a more systematic manner a lot earlier. Because again, we talked about first true word we expect about 12 months of age. But we can get many more signs before that, if you're systematic and diligent and creating the environment where that can happen. And it's super fun. I'll tell you a little story. My son only once, asked me in the middle of something. It was not scheduled. It was not the routine. He looked at me, got my attention, and told me that he wanted to take a nap. And you could have knocked me over with a feather. Even though I know all this stuff works, it shocked me, and I was like, okay, surely you jest. I took him to his room. He needed a nap. He went to sleep. And so, that level of communication may or may not happen with your particular child. It never happened with him again in terms of that particular sign. But there are some really key words and communications that children make with us that, if we can put a system around it, that can be really rewarding for everybody involved, right? Because then you're not listening to or you're listening to less of that, because you've got another way to communicate. So that's my little push for signing. Again, we'll talk about that much more in my Toddler Talk class that's coming up, but I wanted to, just deal with that a little bit. Another question that often comes up, and it came up again this week, is how concerned do parents need to be about stuttering? And this is a big one. And for some reason, stuttering is like people get very nervous about it. And I'm here to tell you to not worry. The vast majority of children who stutter grow out of it. And that's borne out again and again in the research. There are some children who will be lifelong people who stutter for their whole lives. But it's too early to know when your child is 2, 3, and 4 if your child will be one of them. So we just don't know. And there are some things that we can do to mitigate the stuttering. If your child is really bothered by the stuttering, I do recommend that you seek out a speech language pathologist or a speech therapist who understands something about stuttering. And they can be a little bit hard to find, but you just, you do your due diligence, ask around. But most children, when they are going through a language spurt, will stutter. And why is that? I don't know that we really know. The common explanation is their brains are moving too fast for their mouths, right? So they've got a lot to say. And in fact, the moments of stuttering in what we consider typical child development happen during these language spurts. So they've acquired a number of new words. They've got lots of new ideas that they want to express and get out. And sometimes those ideas get stuck. And so when your child is stuttering, it can be really hard to listen to and really hard to watch. And yet, they will take their cues from you. And so if you maintain a calm, neutral presence for them and let them know that what they are saying is much more important to you than how they are saying it, they will follow suit. But again, if your child seems bothered by the stuttering, or if the stuttering feels like it's amping up and it hasn't gone away, it's worth, just for peace of mind, asking a speech therapist what they think, and just seeing how that goes. But in the vast majority of cases, it is a developmental stage that kids are going through. Some kids go through it at 2.5, some kids do it at 3.5, some kids do it at 4, or anywhere in between. But it is a very, very common occurrence, and not necessarily something that you need to worry about. So, okay, those are the questions that came up today, and I'll be back on Thursday at 10 o'clock Eastern, which is 7 o'clock Pacific, and, oh goodness, 3 p.m. Greenwich time in Europe. So until then, have a good one, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.